He said it was just property. I said it was our parents' legacy. He tried to sell it behind my back, so I sold his share before he could blink. And that was only the beginning. My name is Caleb Rourke, and I restore old homes for a living, the kind with creaky floors, peeling paint, and stories soaked into the walls. I've always believed that buildings, like people, deserve a second chance. The one house I never thought I'd have to restore was the one I grew up in. It was a two-story farmhouse just outside Asheville, North Carolina. White shutters, a wraparound porch, and a view of the mountains that could stop you mid-sentence. My parents lived there for over 30 years. They built it together, raised us there, and never once talked about selling it. That place was them in every nail and floorboard. They passed away just 6 months apart. First mom, cancer, then dad, like his heart had waited just long enough. When we buried him, I remember thinking the house looked emptier, like it knew it had lost something too. That's when everything started. My younger brother, Ryan, flew in from Los Angeles for the funeral, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. He hugged me like we were still close, like we still called each other on Sundays. But years of silence don't disappear with a single embrace. We sat in a lawyer's office the next day, old wood desk, dusty books, one of those ticking clocks that makes silence feel louder. The will was simple. The house and property were to be split evenly between Ryan and me, 50-50. He didn't even blink, just nodded, smiled, and said, "Guess we'll sell and split it down the middle." Sell like it was a pair of sneakers. I didn't answer him right away. I just kept staring at the photo on the lawyer's desk. My parents, younger and full of life, standing in front of the porch they built with their bare hands. I wasn't ready to let it go, not the house, not the memories. Ryan patted my back like he already knew my answer. "We'll talk later, man, no rush." But I felt the shift. I knew it right then. We weren't on the same page. Maybe we weren't even in the same book anymore. And what I didn't realize then was that Ryan wasn't just thinking about selling. He was already moving behind the scenes. The strange thing about family is how fast old patterns sneak back in. The way Ryan and I started talking again, or more like circling each other, reminded me of when we were kids. He was always the charmer. Smooth talking, fast moving, full of ideas and shortcuts. I was quieter, slower, more careful. Mom used to say I was the roots and Ryan was the wind. I guess you need both to grow anything, but wind never stays in one place long. After the will was settled, Ryan stuck around a little longer than I expected. At first, I thought maybe the house was getting to him too. Maybe the worn steps and cracked window panes were speaking to him like they did to me. But then he started asking about market values, pulled up listings on his phone, mentioned potential buyers in casual conversation. I didn't say much, just nodded, half listening, hoping he'd come around. One evening, we sat on the back porch drinking beers. The sun was setting over the ridge, casting that deep orange glow across the fields. It was the same view Dad used to sit in front of every evening like clockwork. I thought maybe, just maybe, Ryan would feel it. Instead, he sipped his drink and said, "Caleb, come on, man. This place is beautiful, yeah, but it's dead weight. You don't need this kind of baggage." "Baggage?" I asked. He shrugged. "You're sentimental, I get it. But you fix up houses, right? Sell this, pocket your half, and buy one you can actually make something out of." I didn't answer right away. My jaw clenched before I could stop it. This one already is something. He laughed, not cruelly, but like I was being naive. That hurt worse than if he'd just gotten angry. The rest of the night was quiet. He went inside early, texting someone from the porch steps. The next morning, I found a business card tucked under a coffee mug in the kitchen. A real estate agent. Ryan's name scribbled on the back with a note. Just checking options. That's when the cracks really showed. He didn't see a legacy, he saw a dollar sign. And somewhere deep in my chest, a seed of suspicion was planted. One I didn't want to water but couldn't ignore. It was a Tuesday when I found out. Just an ordinary morning, coffee in hand, standing in the driveway watching fog roll off the hills. Peaceful for about 5 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. The email was from a local title company. At first, I thought it was spam until I saw the subject line. Property sale inquiry, 47 Miller Ridge Road. That was our address. I opened it slowly, my thumb hesitating over the screen. It was a thread. A few back-and-forth messages between Ryan and a broker asking what it would take to initiate a full sale. He hadn't copied me on anything. No heads up, no phone call, just moving forward without me. My heart started pounding. I went back into the house, opened Dad's old desk, and flipped through the drawer where we'd been keeping the deed and documents. Everything was still there, but now it all felt like paper-thin protection. I tried calling Ryan. Voicemail. I tried again. Still nothing. Later that day, I drove into town to clear my head. I parked outside a small diner and just sat there, watching people walk past like the world wasn't crumbling around me. That's when my phone rang. "Hey bro," Ryan said, casual as ever. I didn't even say hello. "Are you trying to sell the house behind my back?" Silence. Then a soft chuckle. "Come on, man, don't be dramatic. I'm just exploring options." "You sent emails, you reached out to a broker. That's not exploring, Ryan, that's planning." He sighed. "Caleb, we both knew this was gonna happen eventually. I didn't think you'd get so worked up." "You didn't think that's the problem," I snapped. "This isn't just some project. This is our parents' home, our home." "Yeah," he said, voice cooling. "And now it's a piece of land we both own. I'm not letting nostalgia screw up my future." That was the moment something broke inside me. He wasn't going to stop. He didn't care what this place meant to me, to us. And I realized I wasn't dealing with my brother anymore. Not really. I was dealing with a man who saw a number on a spreadsheet where I saw a lifetime of memories. I hung up without another word. I sat there in the car, staring at my own reflection in the windshield, and made a quiet promise to myself. If he was going to play dirty, I'd stop playing nice. The thing about being blindsided is that it leaves you dazed at first, confused, hurt, unsure of what to do. But once the fog lifts, what's left is focus. Sharp, cold, clear. I wasn't going to let Ryan sell our family home out from under me. But I also wasn't going to scream, beg, or fight the way he expected. I was going to outthink him. That night, I stayed up past midnight at the kitchen table with a legal pad and my laptop. I started researching property law, not just the basics, but everything I could find about joint ownership in North Carolina. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I kept going. I clicked through forums, read through legal blogs, even emailed a friend from high school who'd gone to law school. And then I found it. It wasn't some magic loophole or backdoor trick. It was just a small clause buried in a real estate statute. In certain cases, if a co-owner wants out of a jointly owned property, their portion can be sold, even without the other's permission, especially if it's sold to someone willing to buy a divided share. It was messy, complicated, risky, but it was real. The idea made my stomach twist. It felt wrong somehow, like I was becoming the thing I hated. But I couldn't just let Ryan bulldoze the past for a payout. I reached out to a property attorney the next morning, a woman named Leslie who spoke in straight lines and didn't waste words. I told her everything. She listened carefully, then leaned back in her chair and said, "You'd need a buyer who understands exactly what they're getting, a partial interest, not full control. It'd be unconventional, but legal? Yes." I walked out of that office carrying more than just papers. I carried a new version of myself. One that was done waiting. Back at the house, I stood in the doorway of my old bedroom. The walls were still the same faded blue. The baseball posters were gone, but I could still see the tape marks. I whispered to myself, "You're not losing this place, not like this." Ryan wanted a sale, fine. I'd give him one. Just not the one he expected. Some decisions don't come with a moment of triumph. They come with a tight chest, a quiet ache, and the kind of silence that follows a slammed door. That's how it felt when I decided to sell Ryan's share of the house. Leslie helped draw up everything. Every document, every disclosure. She made sure it was airtight. The key, she said, was finding a buyer who wasn't afraid to own only part of a property, someone who wasn't looking to flip it for cash, but who understood what I was trying to protect. That's when I thought of Charlie Boone. Charlie was an old friend of my dad's. They used to work construction together back in the 90s. Tough guy, retired now. Lived a few miles out, spent his time woodworking and talking about how things used to be better before everyone started staring at their phones. I remembered Dad once saying, "If I ever had to hand this place off to someone outside the family, I'd trust Charlie." So I drove out to see him. Told him the whole story, the loss of our parents, the split inheritance, the brother who couldn't wait to cash in. I expected him to laugh or shake his head, maybe call it family drama and show me the door. But he didn't. Charlie just sat there nodding slowly. You want me to buy his half, he said. I need someone who won't try to tear the place down, I replied. Someone who understands what it means. I'll buy it back from you down the line. I just need time. Time and space to keep Ryan from burning it all to the ground. He stared out the window for a long moment. Then he said, I'll do it. On one condition, I get first crack at the pecan trees every fall. We shook hands. The paperwork moved fast after that. Ryan's share, 25 acres, half the house and half the memories, transferred legally to Charlie Boone. Clean, quiet, perfectly legal. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. I didn't tell Ryan, not yet. I needed him to find out the way I had suddenly and without warning. And when he did, I was ready for the storm that would follow. Ryan called 3 days later. I'd been expecting it, watching the phone like it was a fuse on a stick of dynamite. Caleb, he said, voice sharp, no small talk. Tell me this is a joke. I didn't answer right away. I stepped outside onto the porch, letting the cool morning air settle over my skin. It's not. You sold my share of the house without telling me. I didn't need to tell you, I said calmly. You were trying to sell it behind my back. I just beat you to it. He laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was tight, brittle-edged with panic. You're out of your mind. Who the hell buys half a property? Someone who respects the land. Someone who knew Dad. Someone who's not planning to bulldoze everything for profit. I could hear him pacing. I could picture the vein in his neck. It always popped when he was about to explode. You sabotaged me. No, Ryan, I said, steady now. You made your move first. You just didn't think I had one too. There was a long silence on the other end. Then his voice dropped low. This isn't over. I know, I said, and hung up. I won't lie, the victory felt hollow at first. I'd spent my whole life trying to be the peacekeeper, the bridge between people. This wasn't who I was, but maybe it was who I needed to be, not out of spite, but out of love. Love for my parents, for the house, for the roots they planted and the quiet life they built. Later that day, Charlie dropped by. He brought a six-pack and a small bag of pecans. Just in case you forgot our deal, he grinned. We sat on the porch for a while, not saying much, just listening to the wind move through the trees. You sure you're ready for the fight that's coming? He asked finally. I nodded. I already had the fight. This was the response. Ryan didn't call again for a week, but I knew better than to think it was over. He wasn't the kind to lick his wounds in silence. He was the kind to plan a counterstrike. I saw his car before I saw him. Ryan pulled into the gravel drive fast, tires spitting dust like anger made solid. He stepped out wearing that same sharp blazer he'd worn at the funeral, like he hadn't realized the house didn't care how expensive your clothes were. I met him in the yard. You didn't return my calls, he said, voice tight. I figured there wasn't much left to say, I replied. He looked past me toward the house. You really brought Charlie Boone into this. He's not in anything. He's just a man who wanted to own a piece of something that mattered. Ryan let out a low whistle, shaking his head. You're something else, Caleb, really. You think this makes you the hero? No, I said. I think it makes me someone who finally stopped letting you decide how things go. That landed. I saw it the way his jaw clenched, the flash of something behind his eyes, not just anger, hurt. He took a few steps forward. You think Mom and Dad would have wanted this, us dividing it up, pulling tricks behind each other's backs? No, I said, softer now. They would have wanted us to work it out, but they also would have wanted you to actually see this place, not just what it's worth on paper. He looked down at the dirt, towing it like he used to when he was a kid and couldn't meet Dad's eyes. Then, almost too quietly, he said, You blindsided me. And you blindsided me first, I replied. You just assumed I'd roll over. We stood there in silence for what felt like forever. Birds chirped. A breeze rustled the trees. Life carried on like it didn't care. Two brothers were drawing lines in the dirt. Finally, Ryan asked, So what now? You've got your money, I said. Charlie paid fair. You can walk away, invest in whatever's next. Or you can keep fighting, drag this into court, try to get something back that isn't coming. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the porch like he could still see our parents sitting there. You know, he said, voice almost breaking, I didn't hate this place, I just couldn't stay. I get that, I said, but you don't have to tear something down just because you can't live inside it. He turned without a word and got back in his car. The tires kicked up dust again, only this time slower. He was thinking. And for once, that gave me hope. The house always felt quiet after a storm, not just the weather kind, but the emotional kind, too. After Ryan left that day, I sat on the porch for a long time trying to understand what I felt. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was grief, the kind that seeps in through the cracks long after the shouting stops. That night, I pulled down a box from the attic, one of the last Mom had packed before her hands got too weak. It was full of old photos, letters, postcards, and newspaper clippings. One corner had a dried flower taped to an index card in her handwriting. Spring 1979, first bloom at the fence line. I sat on the floor of the living room for hours, sifting through the pieces of a life we had once shared. Back when we were just two kids who thought our parents were unbreakable and the house would always stand. I found a photo of Ryan and me on the tire swing Dad hung from the old oak. We were maybe 10 and 12. He was grinning wide. I was holding onto the rope like it was life or death. Even back then, the difference between us was clear. I'd forgotten how happy we used to be. And that's when it hit me. What we'd really lost wasn't land or money or even trust. It was time. Time to say the things we never did. Time to be brothers without a ledger between us. Time to grieve our parents together instead of alone on opposite sides of a boundary line. The next day, I went to visit Charlie. We talked out back in his workshop while he carved a piece of walnut into what looked like a duck. "I'm thinking about giving him an out," I said. Charlie raised an eyebrow. "After all that?" "Not a free pass, just a path. Something that says he can walk away without burning everything behind him." Charlie didn't say much, just nodded, like a man who knew what it cost to carry family in both hands and how heavy it got when you dropped it. On the drive back, I saw the old swing still hanging from the oak. The rope was frayed, but still there. Like us, maybe. A little worn, but not broken. I didn't expect him to come. But he did. Ryan pulled up one evening just as the sun was dipping behind the trees, painting the sky with gold and ash. He didn't slam his car door this time. He didn't march up the steps or throw accusations. He just stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, looking up at the house like it was something fragile. "I was gonna call," he said. "I figured showing up meant more," I replied. He nodded. "It's weird. I drove here 100 times in my head, trying to figure out what I'd say. I thought maybe I'd yell or demand something back. But then I got here and—" he looked around. "It still smells like her garden." "Lilies," I said. "She always planted them in spring." He smiled, but it was a sad one. We sat on the porch, same place where Dad used to drink coffee and read the paper like it was scripture. For a while, we didn't speak. We just listened to the sounds of home. Crickets, wind, a screen door creaking somewhere in the distance. Finally, I said, "I talked to Charlie." Ryan looked over. "He's willing to hold your share as a kind of trust. If someday you want to come back into this as a partner, not a seller." Ryan looked at me, blinking like he wasn't sure he heard me right. "Why would you offer that?" "Because we're not just splitting land," I said. "We're splitting years, memories, pieces of people who raised us. And maybe you can't live here, maybe you don't even want to, but this place is still part of us. It's not just mine, it's ours. If you ever want to come back, not to cash out, but to reconnect, the door's open." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I said some terrible things, Caleb, did some worse ones." "So did I admitted." We were quiet again. Then he asked, "What if I never come back?" "Then you don't," I said, "but at least you'll know it's still here." He nodded slowly, "Thanks." As he stood to leave, he glanced toward the swing. "I can't believe that old rope's still holding on." "Yeah," I said with a small smile, "me neither." He paused, hand on the door of his car. "Tell Charlie I said thanks, too." Then he was gone, but not with anger this time, with something closer to peace. Maybe even forgiveness. Spring came late that year. The frost lingered longer than usual, like winter didn't want to let go. But then one morning I walked out to the edge of the fence line, and there it was. A single lily pushing up through the cold soil. I knelt down and smiled. Mom's handwriting flashed in my mind. Spring 1979, first bloom at the fence line. Some things come back, even after you think they're gone for good. Charlie and I had coffee that morning, sitting on the porch like we'd done 100 times. We talked about the garden, the roof repairs, the old tractor that kept threatening to die. And we didn't talk about Ryan, not because we were avoiding it, but because it wasn't a wound anymore. It was just part of the story. But later that week, I found something in the mailbox, a small padded envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, the one from the tire swing years ago with me and Ryan grinning like idiots. On the back, in his handwriting, he'd written, "I remember. I'm glad you did too." No signature, none needed. I stood on the porch a long time holding that picture. The wind moved through the pecan trees the same way it always had. The swing creaked slightly like it was remembering us. This house, our house, was never really about the building. It was about the stories it held, the arguments, the laughter, the silences after hard truths, the way our parents shaped us without us realizing it until years later. Ryan had chosen his path. I had chosen mine. But the house stayed. I still run it, small projects, steady maintenance, weekends in the garden. Sometimes I host a cookout for old neighbors. Sometimes I sit on the porch alone and just listen to the wind. Charlie's still around, but he talks more about fishing now than real estate. Says he's slowing down. I think he just likes the quiet. I don't know if Ryan will ever come back. But I hope he does. Because the door's still open. And the roots, no matter how deep the cracks run above them, they remain.